A shy young woman fixed her blouse on the car window, unaware that her boss was watching from inside. Hi, my beautiful family. Welcome to Mr. Peter Stories. Today, I speak to you not just as a storyteller, but as a broken man. I am deeply, painfully upset. For days, no, for months, I've been carrying the weight of this channel on my shoulders, working 16 to 18 hours every single day. I've sacrificed my health, my peace, my sleep, all to bring you stories filled with love, fire, and passion. Stories that come from my soul, but my heart is breaking. Because most of my family here, you, the ones I believed in, are silent. YouTube is pushing us away. They're burying our voice. I've begged, pleaded 1,000 times. Please subscribe to this channel. This is your home. This is our family. But still, so many watch and walk away. Fake channels are stealing my name. They are stealing my voice, my face, my blood and sweat, and still, many of you support them more than the real Mr. Peter. I feel invisible in the very home I built with love. And if things continue like this, if for 10 more days nothing changes, you may never hear from Mr. Peter again. I don't want to say goodbye, but I'm tired. So tired. But for now, I will hold on for you. I will speak one more story into the wind, because even if only one heart is listening, that heart matters to me. Let's begin today's story from a place of love, sorrow, and hope. The early October morning was crisp, with golden sunlight filtering through the trees that lined the quiet street where Harmony Books stood. Mila Moon hurried down the sidewalk, her heart racing. Today was her first day at the bookstore, and she was determined to make a good impression. She paused in front of the shop, taking a deep breath to calm her nerves. A quick glance at her watch confirmed she was 15 minutes early. Perfect. But as she reached for the door handle, she caught her reflection in the window of a sleek black car parked nearby. Her blouse had a button undone, revealing more than she'd intended. Mortified, Mila glanced around the empty street before quickly moving to the car window to fix herself. She adjusted her collar and smoothed down the front of her blouse, using the tinted glass as a mirror. There, she whispered to herself with a satisfied smile, tucking a loose strand of her curly hair behind her ear. Now I look professional. Just as she finished, the car window began to lower. Mila froze, her eyes widening in horror as the glass descended to reveal a man sitting inside. Not just any man, but one whose photograph she'd seen on the bookstore's website. Harry Mason, the owner of Harmony Books. His gaze met hers, a hint of amusement playing at the corners of his mouth. "Good morning," he said, his voice deep and surprisingly gentle. "You must be Mila, our new literature specialist." Mila's cheeks burned with embarrassment. She wanted to disappear, to melt into the sidewalk beneath her feet. Yes, that's me," she managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm so sorry, I didn't realize—" "No need to apologize," Harry said, stepping out of the car. He was tall, his presence commanding yet not intimidating. He wore a casual blue sweater that complemented his fair complexion, and his smile was genuine. "I was just enjoying the quiet before opening up." There was something in the way he looked at her, not with judgment but with curiosity, that made her racing heart slow down just a bit. For a brief moment, as the morning sun caught his profile, Mila felt a strange flutter in her stomach that had nothing to do with embarrassment. "First days can be nerve-wracking," he continued, reaching for his messenger bag from the passenger seat. "I still remember mine. I knocked over an entire display of Jane Austen novels trying to impress a customer." His admission of imperfection, freely given to put her at ease, touched something in Mila. She found herself smiling despite her embarrassment. "Thank you," she said softly. "I promise I'll try not to demolish any literary classics today." Harry laughed, the sound warming the space between them. Well, if you do, make sure it's something controversial. Maybe James Joyce. I've always found Ulysses to be a bit pretentious. The literary joke surprised a laugh out of Mila. My literature professor would have a heart attack hearing that. Let me guess, Harry said as he moved toward the shop door, keys jingling in his hand. Columbia? NYU? Howard University, she replied with a hint of pride. I graduated with my master's in English literature last spring. Impressive, he said, and she could tell he meant it. As he unlocked the door, he held it open for her. When she passed through, the subtle scent of his cologne, sandalwood and something uniquely him, made her heart skip a beat. After you, Mila. Welcome to Harmony Books. As she stepped through the doorway, Mila felt something shift inside her. The morning light streamed through the large windows, illuminating thousands of books on polished wooden shelves. The scent of paper, ink and possibility filled her lungs. The bookstore was more beautiful than she had imagined from the photos she'd seen online. 3 stories of books stretched upward, with elegant spiral staircases connecting the levels. Reading nooks with plush armchairs were scattered throughout, and a small cafe occupied one corner, the aroma of fresh coffee mingling with the scent of books. This place is magical, Mila breathed, turning in a slow circle to take it all in. Harry watched her with a soft smile. That's exactly what I thought the first time I walked in here. I was just a customer then. He ran his hand along a nearby shelf. 5 years later, when the previous owner decided to retire, I couldn't bear the thought of this place becoming anything else. So I took a leap of faith. The passion in his voice resonated with something deep inside Mila. She'd always believed that bookstores were sacred spaces, temples to human imagination and knowledge. Finding someone who felt the same way made her feel less alone in a world that increasingly valued digital convenience over the tactile magic of books. It must have been terrifying, she said. Absolutely, he admitted, leading her deeper into the store. I had a comfortable job in publishing, a steady paycheck. Everyone thought I was crazy to give that up. He paused by a display of leather-bound classics. But some risks are worth taking, don't you think? The question seemed to carry more weight than a casual conversation about career choices should. Mila found herself looking directly into his eyes, trying to decipher what lay beneath his words. The pooh. Most beautiful journeys often start with a step into the unknown, she replied softly. Something flickered in his expression. Recognition, perhaps, or appreciation for the depth of her response. For a moment, they stood in silence, the morning light catching the subtle auburn highlights in his otherwise dark hair. Let me show you the literature section, he said finally, his voice carrying a new warmth. Since that's where you'll be, spending most of your time. As they walked through the store, Harry pointing out various sections and introducing her to the few other employees who had arrived early, Mila found herself noticing small details about him. The way the corners of his eyes crinkled slightly when he smiled genuinely, how he knew the name of every employee's family members, the gentle way he handled the books, as if each one contained not just stories, but living souls. The literature section was located on the second floor beneath a stunning stained glass skylight that bathed the space in multicolored light. Shelves, arranged in a semicircle, housed everything from ancient Greek plays to contemporary novels. This is your domain now, Harry said, gesturing to the beautiful space. I've been managing it myself since our last literature specialist left, but honestly, it deserves someone with a deeper knowledge than mine. I'll take good care of it, Mila promised, already mentally reorganizing some of the collections and planning themed displays. Her fingers trailed along the spines of several classics. Though I have to admit, you've done a wonderful job. The collection is impressively diverse. Thank you, he said, and she caught a hint of vulnerability beneath his confident demeanor. That means a lot, especially coming from someone with your background. My background? I may have looked up your thesis on decolonizing the Western literary canon, he admitted with a slightly sheepish smile. When your application came in, it was brilliant, by the way. Mila blinked in surprise. Her thesis had been published in a relatively obscure academic journal. The fact that he had not only found it, but read it thoroughly enough to have an opinion showed a level of interest that seemed to go beyond normal employer due diligence. You read my thesis? Twice, he confirmed. Your perspective on how marginalized voices have shaped literature, even when excluded from the traditional canon, was eye-opening. I've actually been revising our ordering policies based on some of your points. A warm feeling blossomed in Mila's chest, a mixture of professional pride and something more personal. To be seen, to have her ideas not just acknowledged but valued and implemented, was both rare and precious. I don't know what to say, she admitted. You don't need to say anything. Just help me make this the most thoughtfully curated literature section in the city. He checked his watch. We open in 30 minutes. Would you like some coffee before we start the day? Our cafe makes an exceptional cappuccino. I'd love that, Mila said. As they descended the spiral staircase, Mila's hand brushing the railing just behind Harry's, she felt a curious sense of destiny. Out of all the bookstores in the city, she had chosen this one to apply to. Out of all the reflective surfaces on the street, she had chosen his car window to fix her blouse. And out of all the moments he could have chosen to lower that window, he had chosen the exact second she stood there. The literary scholar in her knew that coincidences in novels were rarely just coincidences. They were the author's way of nudging characters toward their fate. She wondered as Harry handed her a perfectly made cappuccino, their fingers touching briefly in the exchange, what story was being written here and where it might lead. All she knew was that she wanted to turn the page and find out. Chapter 2. First impressions. Mila's first week at Harmony Books passed in a blur of cataloguing systems, customer interactions, and getting to know her colleagues. Despite her initial embarrassment, she found herself settling into the rhythm of the bookstore with surprising ease. Part of that comfort came from Harry's leadership style. He was hands-on, without being controlling, offering guidance when needed, but trusting her expertise with the literature section. Mid-October brought unusually heavy rain to the city, transforming the golden autumn into something more melancholy. Mila had almost convinced herself that the strange flutter she felt whenever Harry was near was simply admiration for a good boss. Until the afternoon the skies opened up without warning. Mila had stepped out during her lunch break to grab a sandwich from the deli down the street. Lost in thought about a new display she was planning for contemporary women poets, she'd failed to notice the darkening clouds. Halfway back to the bookstore, the first heavy drops began to fall. By the time she was a block away, the gentle shower had transformed into a torrential downpour. She ran the final distance, arriving at Harmony Books thoroughly soaked, her carefully arranged curls plastered to her head, her light cotton dress clinging uncomfortably to her skin. Standing in the entrance, dripping onto the welcome mat, she felt like a waterlogged cat. "That doesn't look like a 5-minute shower," came Harry's voice from behind the register. "The weather app said 0% chance of rain today," Mila said, trying to wring out her hair without creating an even bigger puddle. "I should have known better than to trust technology over my grandmother's aching knees. She always says they're more reliable than any meteorologist." Harry laughed, the sound warming her despite her drenched state. "Your grandmother sounds like a wise woman." He disappeared into the back office, returning a moment later with a navy blue sweater and a small towel. "Here, the bathroom's through there if you want to dry off a bit." Mila accepted the offerings gratefully. "Thank you. I'll try not to drip all over your beautiful hardwood floors." "The floors have seen worse," he assured her. "Take your time." In the small employee bathroom, Mila peeled off her wet cardigan and used the towel to blot her hair and skin as best she could. Her dress was damp, but not completely soaked through. She slipped Harry's sweater over her shoulders immediately, enveloped in warmth and the same sandalwood scent she'd noticed on her first day. The sweater was comically large on her, the sleeves extending well past her fingertips, but there was something profoundly comforting about being wrapped in its soft embrace. She rolled up the sleeves and caught her reflection in the mirror, her skin glowing from the rain, her eyes bright, Harry's sweater making her look small and somehow protected. When she emerged, Harry was waiting with a steaming mug of tea. "Ginger and honey," he explained as he handed it to her. "My mother's cure for everything from rainstorms to broken hearts." "Thank you," Mila said, inhaling the spicy, sweet aroma. "For everything. I must look a mess." Harry studied her for a moment, his gaze so intent that Mila felt her cheeks warm. "Actually," he said softly, "you look like a heroine in a Victorian novel, the kind who gets caught in the rain and ends up finding adventure." The literary reference made her smile. "Hopefully with fewer consumption-related plot twists." "Definitely. Fewer consumptive heroines in my bookstore," Harry agreed with a grin. "It's bad for business." He glanced toward the window, where the rain continued to pour in sheets. "It doesn't look like it's letting up. What time does your shift end?" "5, Mila said, following his gaze to the deluge outside. "Mine too. I can give you a ride home if you'd like." The offer was practical, sensible even, but something about the prospect of being alone with Harry in the intimate space of his car made Mila's heart race. "That's very kind, but I don't want to put you out of your way." "It's no trouble," Harry assured her. "Besides, I'd worry about you swimming home in this weather." Mila laughed. "My apartment's in Brookfield. Is that too far?" "Not at all. I'm in Westbridge, just one neighborhood over." He smiled, and Mila had the distinct impression that he was pleased by this geographical coincidence. The rest of the afternoon passed in a curious mixture of anticipation and nervous energy. Mila found herself glancing at the clock more often than usual, counting down the hours until 5. She told herself it was simply eagerness to get home and into dry clothes, but the flutter in her stomach when Harry caught her eye across the store suggested otherwise. At precisely 5 o'clock, as Mila was helping her last customer find a specific edition of Pride and Prejudice, Harry appeared with 2 large umbrellas. "Ready when you are," he said, his voice carrying a hint of something Mila couldn't quite place, anticipation perhaps, or nervousness that mirrored her own. They waited until Sophie, the evening manager, arrived to take over before heading out. The rain had subsided to a gentle drizzle, but the sky remained heavy with clouds that promised more to come. "My car's just around the corner," Harry said, opening one of the umbrellas and holding it over Mila. "Stay close. These sidewalks get slippery." As they walked, Mila was acutely aware of Harry's proximity. To stay under the umbrella's protection, they had to walk nearly shoulder to shoulder. Occasionally, their arms would brush, sending a current of awareness through her that had nothing to do with static electricity. "So, what do you think of Harmony Books so far?" Harry asked as they navigated a particularly large puddle. "Honest opinion, I can take it." "I love it," Mila said without hesitation. "It's everything a bookstore should be. Welcoming, diverse, a little magical. The way you've organized the sections shows real thought, not just alphabetical convenience. And your staff genuinely cares about connecting readers with the right books." Harry looked pleased. "That's the highest compliment you could give. When I took over, I wanted to create a space where books weren't just products but possibilities. You've succeeded. I especially love the children's section. The reading nook with the painted sky ceiling. Pure genius." "That was actually my sister's idea," Harry admitted. "She's an elementary school teacher, said that kids need to feel like they're entering another world when they read." He stopped beside a black car that Mila recognized with a start, as the same one from her first day. Here we are. He opened the passenger door for her, holding the umbrella to ensure she didn't get wet again. As Mila settled into the leather seat, she was struck by the reversal of their positions from that first morning. Now she was inside the car looking out, rather than outside looking in. Harry jogged around to the driver's side, folding the umbrella, before sliding in beside her. In the confined space of the car, his presence seemed larger somehow, more immediate. Droplets of rain glistened in his hair, and when he turned to her, a brief smile created a single dimple in his right cheek that Mila hadn't noticed before. "Brookfield, you said?" "Yes, the apartment complex on Maple Street." As Harry navigated through the rain-slicked streets, they fell into conversation as easily as old friends. Mila learned that he had studied comparative literature before going into publishing, that he had a sister and brother, both younger than him, that he played piano but claimed to be terrible at it, and that he'd wanted to own a bookstore since he was 10 years old and had built a miniature one in his bedroom, charging his siblings pennies to borrow his books. In return, she told him about growing up in Baltimore with her grandmother after her parents' accident when she was 12, her father a jazz saxophonist, her mother a classical violinist, about her passion for stories that traversed cultural boundaries, about her dream of eventually writing a novel of her own. "What kind of novel?" Harry asked, genuinely interested. "A love story," Mila admitted, feeling uncharacteristically shy about this revelation. "But not the typical kind. I want to write about love that transforms, that sees people for who they truly are." Harry glanced at her, his expression thoughtful. "The best love stories are always about seeing, aren't they? Not just the surface, but the essence." "Exactly," Mila said, surprised and pleased by his understanding. "That's exactly it." The rain had intensified again, drumming on the roof of the car, creating a cocoon of sound that made their conversation feel even more intimate. As they stopped at a red light, a crack of thunder rumbled overhead, followed by a brilliant flash of lightning that illuminated Harry's profile in stark relief. The straight line of his nose, the curve of his lips, the angle of his jaw. In that flash of elemental light, Mila felt something shift inside her, a recognition that went beyond physical attraction or intellectual compatibility. For a moment, it seemed as if the universe itself had staged this tableau. The storm, the light, the two of them suspended in this private world, to show her something important. The light turned green, and Harry drove on. As they approached her apartment complex, Mila felt a strange reluctance to have the journey end. "Which building?" Harry asked, as they turned onto Maple Street. "The red brick one on the left." "But you can just drop me at the entrance. I don't want to make you drive through the parking lot in this weather." "Nonsense," Harry said firmly. "I'm not letting you get soaked again. Door-to-door service is part of the Harmony Books employee package." He pulled up directly in front of her building and turned to look at her. The rain streamed down the windows, distorting the streetlights into abstract patterns that played across his features. "Thank you for the ride," Mila said, suddenly conscious of how close they were in the darkened car. "And for the sweater." She began to remove it, but Harry placed a gentle hand on her arm. "Keep it for now," he said softly. "It looks better on you anyway." Their eyes met in the dim light, and for a heartbeat, Mila thought he might lean closer. Instead, he reached past her to open the glove compartment, pulling out a second umbrella. "Take this," he said. "You can return it tomorrow." Mila accepted the umbrella, their fingers brushing in the exchange. "Tomorrow," she echoed, the word feeling like both a promise and a small eternity to wait. Harry insisted on getting out to open her door and walk her to the entrance of her building, holding the umbrella over her with careful attention. At the door, they faced each other, protected from the rain but not from the tension that had been building between them all evening. "Thank you again," Mila said, fishing her keys from her bag. "For everything." "It was my pleasure," Harry replied, his voice lower than usual. Truly, a raindrop escaping from the edge of the umbrella landed on Mila's cheek. Before she could wipe it away, Harry's hand was there, his thumb gently brushing across her skin. The touch was fleeting, but electric, sending a current of warmth through her entire body. "Rain," he explained unnecessarily, his hand lingering near her face a moment longer than needed. "Rain," Mila agreed, barely trusting her voice. They stood in silence for a beat longer, the air between them charged with unspoken possibilities. Then Harry took a small step back, breaking the spell. "I should let you get inside and into dry clothes," he said. "See you tomorrow?" "See you tomorrow," Mila confirmed, her keys jingling slightly in her trembling hand. As she let herself into the building, she couldn't resist glancing back. Harry stood watching, a tall figure beneath the black umbrella, rain falling all around him like a scene from a film. He raised his hand in a small wave, and Mila returned the gesture before closing the door. In the elevator up to her apartment, Mila pressed her face into the soft fabric of Harry's sweater, breathing in his scent and replaying the moment of his touch against her cheek. Outside, the October storm continued to rage, but inside, a different kind of tempest was brewing, one that both thrilled and terrified her with its potential force. Chapter 3. Whispered Confessions, Late. October brought Harmony Books' annual Autumn Reading Festival. The event, which Harry had described as literary Christmas, involved author readings, book signings, children's story hours, and themed displays throughout the store. As the newest employee, Mila had thrown herself into the preparations with enthusiasm, staying late most evenings to perfect her literature section's festival contributions. The Gothic literature display had been her special project, complete. With artificial cobwebs, Victorian-inspired decorations, and carefully curated editions of classics from Shelley to Stoker. The theme seemed particularly fitting as Halloween approached, and earlier sunsets brought a natural atmosphere of mystery to the bookstore's upper floors. On this particular evening, 3 days before the festival's opening, Mila was alone on the second floor, finalizing the display. Harry had gone to a meeting with a local authors group, and the rest of the staff had departed hours ago. Mila enjoyed the solitude of the empty bookstore, the quiet creaking of the old building, the soft pools of light cast by the vintage reading lamps, the comforting presence of thousands of books surrounding her. She was balancing on a ladder, placing a leather-bound edition of Wuthering Heights on the top shelf, when she heard the distinctive ding of the elevator arriving. On her floor, a moment later, Harry appeared, his tie loosened and jacket slung over his shoulder. "You're still here?" he asked, surprise evident in his voice. "It's almost 9. Mila smiled down at him from her perch. "Time flies when you're arranging books." By descending levels of supernatural dread, Harry laughed, approaching to stand at the foot of the ladder. "A highly scientific organizational system. I approve." "How was the meeting?" Mila asked, descending the ladder with care. "Productive. We've got 15 local authors confirmed for the festival." He glanced at her display. "This looks fantastic, by the way. I love the bat silhouettes. Where did you find those?" "I made them," Mila admitted. "I used to help my grandmother with Halloween decorations for her classroom. She taught middle school English for 40 years. Crafting is in my blood." Harry looked impressed. "Multi-talented as well as brilliant. Harmony Books hit the jackpot when you applied." The compliment warmed Mila more than it should have. Over the past 2 weeks since the rainy day, they had maintained a strictly professional relationship at work, though she often caught him watching her when he thought she wasn't looking. "I'm hoping to create the perfect atmosphere for our late-night Gothic reading," she said, redirecting the conversation to safer ground. Harry's eyes crinkled with amusement. "Planning to scare our customers." "Just enough to make them want to keep the lights on while reading," Myla replied with a grin. Fear is an underrated reading enhancement. As she reached the bottom of the ladder, her foot slipped slightly on the rung. Harry's hands immediately went to her waist to steady her, strong and sure. The sudden contact made Myla's breath catch. For a moment, they remained frozen in that position. Myla on the ladder's lowest rung, Harry's hands at her waist, their faces unexpectedly level. "Careful," he murmured, his voice lower than usual. "Thank you," Myla replied, equally soft. Neither moved to break the contact. Harry's eyes, illuminated by the warm lamplight, searched hers with an intensity that made her heart race. Myla became acutely aware of the warmth of his hands through the thin fabric of her blouse, the slight scent of coffee on his breath, the way his gaze dropped briefly to her lips before returning to her eyes. The moment was shattered by a sudden mechanical groan from somewhere in the building, followed by the lights flickering once, twice, and then extinguishing completely. "Perfect timing for a bookstore specializing in Gothic literature," Harry muttered in the darkness. Myla laughed nervously, using the sound of his voice to orient herself. She could no longer see him, but his hands remained at her waist, an anchor. In the sudden blackness, "Please tell me we have emergency lights," she said. "We do, but they're apparently taking a night off." The pressure of his hands increased slightly, helping her down the final step of the ladder. "There's a flashlight in my office. If you hold on to me, I can get us there." In the darkness, Myla's senses seemed heightened. As Harry's hand slid from her waist to clasp hers, she was intensely aware of the texture of his palm, slightly calloused at the base of his fingers, warm and dry against her own. "This way," he said, leading her carefully through the bookshelves. They moved slowly, navigating by touch and memory. Myla's free hand trailed along the spines of books as they passed, using them as guides in the darkness. "The elevator won't be working," Harry noted as they reached the balcony overlooking the main floor. "We'll have to take the stairs." The staircase, elegant and spiral in the light, became a treacherous journey in the darkness. They descended carefully, step by step, Harry going first and keeping a firm hold on Myla's hand. 13, he counted softly as they reached the bottom. All safe. The main floor was equally dark, the large windows at the front of the store allowing only the faintest illumination from distant streetlights. They moved through the maze of bookshelves toward the back of the store where Harry's office was located. Just as they reached the office door, a tremendous crash of thunder shook the building, and Myla jumped involuntarily, colliding with Harry's solid form. "Sorry," she whispered, embarrassed by her reaction. "I wasn't expecting—" "It's all right," he assured her, his voice close to her ear. "I'm not a fan of sudden noises in the dark either." His admission of vulnerability, freely given to ease her embarrassment, just as he had done on her first day, touched something in Myla. Without thinking, she squeezed his hand in silent gratitude. Harry fumbled with his keys in the darkness, eventually finding the right one to unlock his office. Inside, the blackness was absolute. "The flashlight should be in the top drawer of my desk," he said, releasing her hand reluctantly. "Stay here by the door while I find it." Myla listened to his careful movements in the darkness. The sound of him navigating around furniture, the slide of a drawer opening, the soft muttering as he searched by touch. "Got it," he announced after a moment, and a beam of light cut through the darkness. He directed it toward her, lowering it quickly when she raised a hand to shield her eyes. "Sorry, now we can at least see where we're going." "What do you think caused the power outage?" Myla asked, watching as Harry searched through another drawer. "The storm. October's end often brings volatile weather." He held up a second, smaller flashlight triumphantly. "Here, now we both have light." Myla accepted the flashlight, their fingers brushing in the exchange. Even that slight contact sent a shiver of awareness through her. "We should probably check the fuse box," Harry said, "though I suspect this is a neighborhood issue rather than just our building." He glanced at his watch, illuminating the face with his flashlight. "It's after 9 now. I should get you home." "We could wait a bit," Mila suggested. "See if the power comes back on." A flash of lightning illuminated the office briefly through the small window, followed almost immediately by a deafening crack of thunder. Rain began to lash against the glass with renewed intensity. "Or maybe not," she amended, imagining the treacherous drive in such conditions. Harry's face, half illuminated by the flashlight he held at his side, looked thoughtful. "We could wait in the cafe area. At least the chairs there are comfortable." They made their way through the darkened store to the small cafe in the corner. With their flashlights creating intersecting paths of light, they managed to locate 2 armchairs positioned near one of the large front windows. Outside, the storm raged, lightning periodically illuminating the street in stark flashes. "Should I try to make coffee?" Harry asked as they settled into the chairs. "The machine's gas-powered." "In the dark? I'm not sure that's wise," Mila said with a laugh. "Besides, I'm actually enjoying this. It's like being in one of those gothic novels we were just arranging. Without the vengeful ghosts, I hope." "The night is still young," Mila teased. They fell into comfortable conversation, their flashlights positioned on a nearby table to create a soft, diffused light between them. As the storm continued outside, Mila found herself sharing stories she rarely told, about her grandmother who had raised her after her parents' car accident, about her first heartbreak in college, about her dreams of creating a literary scholarship for underprivileged youth. In turn, Harry revealed his own closely held truths, his father's disappointment when he chose literature over law, his brief, failed marriage in his 20s to a woman who had found his passion for books quaint but impractical, his quiet fear that physical bookstores would eventually become obsolete in the digital age. "That won't happen," Mila said firmly, "not to places like Harmony. Books aren't just about content, they're about experience, the way they feel in your hands, the sound of a page turning, the scent of ink and paper. You can't digitize that." Harry's smile was visible even in the dim light. "That's exactly what I believe. But sometimes, late at night, I worry. That's when you call me," Mila said without thinking. "I'll remind you." The words hung between them, laden with meaning beyond their surface. In the intimate darkness, with the storm raging outside, it felt like a promise of something more. "I might take you up on that," Harry said softly. A particularly brilliant flash of lightning illuminated his face completely for a split second, the intensity in his eyes, the slight parting of his lips, before plunging them back into shadow. Mila's heart raced. She was acutely aware that they were entirely alone in the bookstore, cocooned in darkness, with only the storm and their quiet voices for company. The situation held all the elements of the romance novels shelved on the 3rd floor, the accidental confinement, the forced proximity, the gradual revealing of secrets in the dark. But this wasn't fiction. This was her life, her career, her growing feelings for a man who was not just attractive and kind, but also her employer. The complication of their professional relationship had kept her from acknowledging the attraction that had been building. Since that first morning by his car, as if reading her thoughts, Harry sighed softly. "I've been wanting to talk to you about something, Mila." Her pulse quickened. "What is it?" "These past few weeks, working with you?" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "I've found myself looking forward to coming to the store in a way I haven't for a long time." "I've enjoyed working here too," Mila said, deliberately keeping her response professional despite the flutter in her stomach. "It's not just about work," Harry continued, his voice lowering. He was interrupted by the sudden restoration of power, lights flickering on throughout the store. The abrupt brightness made them both blink, the spell of darkness broken by the harsh reality of fluorescent illumination. For a moment, they stared at each other across the now lit space between their chairs. Without the concealing shadows, Mila felt exposed, vulnerable, as if her growing feelings were written plainly on her face for Harry to read. Harry cleared his throat, sitting up straighter in his chair. "Well, that's fortunate timing. Now I can drive you home safely." The professional tone had returned to his voice. The moment of intimacy passed. Mila felt a pang of disappointment, even as she recognized the wisdom in his retreat. "Yes, of course," she agreed, rising from her chair. "I should get home. Big day tomorrow with the festival preparations." They moved efficiently around the store, turning off lights, checking that everything was secure. The easy camaraderie of their darkened conversation had been replaced by a careful politeness that maintained professional boundaries. In the car, the rain still pelting the roof, Harry turned to her before starting the engine. "Mila, about what I was saying before." She held her breath, waiting. "I just want you to know that I value your contribution to Harmony Books enormously. Your ideas for the festival have been outstanding." It wasn't what he had been about to say in the darkness. They both knew it, but it was safer, cleaner, less complicated. "Thank you," Mila said, trying to hide her disappointment. "That means a lot coming from you." As Harry drove her home through the storm-lashed streets, Mila gazed out the window at the blurred lights of the city. In the Gothic novels she loved, confessions made in darkness often returned to haunt the light of day. But here, it seemed, their whispered confidences would remain suspended in that temporary blackout, neither acknowledged nor forgotten, but existing in a liminal space between what was and what might yet be. When they reached her apartment building, Harry insisted on walking her to the door with an umbrella, just as he had that first rainy evening. At the entrance they paused, rain drumming on the fabric above them. "Thank you for the ride," Mila said, "and for the Gothic experience at the bookstore." "Very on brand," Harry smiled, the dimple appearing in his cheek. "Perhaps we should advertise it as a special feature. Occasional blackouts for authentic Victorian reading conditions." Mila laughed, grateful for the return of their easy banter. "Charge extra for the emotional torment and consumption." Exactly. They stood in silence for a moment, neither quite ready to separate despite the late hour and the continuing storm. "Mila," Harry began, his expression growing serious, "the things we talked about tonight, I want you to know they stay between us. I don't usually share so much of myself with—" He hesitated, searching for the right word. "With employees," Mila suggested, trying to keep her voice light despite the sudden heaviness in her chest. "With anyone," Harry corrected softly. His eyes held hers, communicating something his professional boundaries wouldn't allow him to say aloud. "You're easy to talk to, Mila. Too easy, perhaps." The implications of his words hung in the rain-scented air between them. Mila's heart beat, a rapid tattoo against her ribs as she recognized the meaning beneath his careful phrasing, that he felt the same attraction, the same dangerous pull toward something more than a professional relationship. "I feel the same way," she admitted, her voice barely audible above the rain. "It's complicated, very complicated," Harry agreed, his gaze dropping briefly to her lips before returning to her eyes with renewed intensity. For a breathless moment, Mila thought he might close the distance between them, professional complications be damned. Instead, he took a small step back, his free hand sliding into his pocket as if to physically restrain himself. "Good night, Mila," he said gently. "I'll see you tomorrow." "Good night, Harry," she replied, understanding and respecting his restraint, even as a part of her longed to ignore the sensible boundaries between them. As she entered her building, she glanced back to see him still standing there, a solitary figure beneath the black umbrella, with rain falling all around him, just as he had been that first evening. Only this time, His expression held a longing that mirrored her own, visible even through the curtain of rain that separated them. In her apartment, Mila leaned against the closed door, her mind replaying their evening in the darkened bookstore. The whispered confessions, the charged silences, the things said and unsaid. Outside, the storm continued to rage, a fitting backdrop to the tempest building within her own heart. Chapter 4. Moonlight Serenade, the Autumn Reading Festival at Harmony Books, had been an unqualified success. For 3 days at the end of October, the store had buzzed with activity. Authors reading from their works, children gathered for storytelling sessions, customers browsing specially curated displays. Mila's Gothic literature section had been particularly popular, with the late-night reading of classic horror stories attracting a standing-room-only crowd. Now, on Halloween night, as the clock ticked past closing time, an exhausted but satisfied quiet had settled over the bookstore. Most of the staff had already departed for various costume parties and celebrations, leaving only Mila to finish returning a few misplaced books and Harry to complete the day's accounting in his office. Mila moved through the empty store, enjoying the peaceful aftermath of the festival's cheerful chaos. The past week had been so hectic that she and Harry had barely exchanged more than professional pleasantries, their intimate conversation during the blackout seemingly pushed aside by the demands of the event. Yet she had caught him looking at her across crowded rooms, his eyes finding hers in unguarded moments before one or both of them would look away. The tension between them remained, unaddressed but undeniably present. As she shelved the last stray book in the poetry section, Mila found herself humming softly, an old jazz standard her father used to play on lazy Sunday mornings. The melody brought back memories of sunlight streaming through windows, the scent of coffee and her mother's pancakes, the warm security of family before tragedy had altered that landscape forever. Lost in the memory and the music, Mila didn't immediately register that she had begun singing aloud, her voice rising and falling. With the melancholy beauty of the song, she moved through the dimly lit store, trailing her fingers along bookshelves as she sang, unaware that she was no longer alone. "The way you look tonight," came Harry's voice from behind her. "One of my favorites." Mila turned, startled and embarrassed to find him standing at the base of the spiral staircase, watching her with an expression of genuine wonder. "I didn't realize anyone was listening," she said, feeling heat rise to her cheeks. "Sorry about that." "Don't apologize," Harry said, moving toward her. "You have a beautiful voice. Where did you learn to sing like that?" Mila shrugged, still embarrassed but pleased by his admiration. "My father was a musician, jazz saxophone. Music was always part of our home." "He taught you well," Harry said, stopping a few feet away from her. The moonlight streaming through the skylights cast dappled shadows across his face, highlighting the planes of his features in silver and shadow. "Would you sing a little more? Please? The store's empty, and after the madness of the festival, I could use something beautiful." There was a vulnerability in his request that Mila couldn't refuse. Taking a deep breath, she began to sing again, her voice gaining confidence as the familiar melody filled the space between them. The acoustics of the empty bookstore gave her voice a richness that surprised even her, the notes seeming to dance among the shelves and spiral upward through the atrium. As she reached the chorus, Harry moved closer, his expression transfixed. To her astonishment, he began to hum along, his deep voice harmonizing perfectly with hers. When she faltered slightly in surprise, he picked up the melody, his rich baritone carrying the song forward. "You didn't tell me you could sing," Mila said when they finished the verse together, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't." "Not really," Harry replied with a self-conscious smile. "But my mother insisted on piano lessons, and singing came with the territory. You're good, Mila insisted. Really good. Harry's smile widened, a flash of boyish charm breaking through his usual composed demeanor. We're good together, he said, then quickly clarified. Our voices, I mean. The slip created a moment of charged silence between them, the double meaning hanging in the moonlit air. Rather than retreat from it, Harry held out his hand. Dance with me, he asked, his voice soft but steady. Mila looked at his outstretched, and knowing that accepting it would cross a line they had been carefully towing since the night of the blackout. The professional barrier between them had already begun to crumble, but this would be a deliberate step across the threshold. There's no music, she whispered, even as her hand moved toward his of its own accord. We'll make our own, Harry replied, his fingers closing gently around hers. As he drew her closer, placing his other hand lightly on her waist, Mila felt the last of her reservations dissolve. They began to sway together in the silent bookstore, their movements creating a whisper of sound against the wooden floor. After a moment, Harry began to hum again, the same melody she had been singing, and Mila joined him, their voices twining together in the moonlight. They moved between the bookshelves, their dance unhurried and intimate. Mila was acutely aware of the warmth of Harry's hand at her waist, the subtle scent of his cologne, the way his eyes never left hers as they turned slowly in the pools of silvery light from the full Halloween moon overhead. As their improvised song came to its natural conclusion, their steps slowed, but neither pulled away. Instead, they stood still amidst the shelves, hands still connected, bodies close enough that Mila could feel the rise and fall of Harry's chest with each breath. Mila, he said softly, her name a question and an answer all at once. Harry, she replied, understanding flowing between them in the simple exchange of names. Slowly, as if giving her every chance to step away, Harry raised his free hand to her face, his fingers brushing a strand of hair behind her ear before coming to rest against her cheek. His touch was reverent, almost hesitant, despite the certainty in his eyes. Mila leaned into his hand, giving him the assurance he sought. With a small sound that might have been relief or surrender, Harry closed the remaining distance between them, his lips finding hers in a kiss that was both tender and achingly sweet. The kiss was gentle at first, as delicate as the moonlight that bathed them, but as Mila's arms slid up around his neck, Harry deepened the kiss, drawing her closer with the arm that had encircled her waist. The hand at her cheek slid into her hair, cradling the back of her head as if she were something infinitely precious. When they finally parted, both slightly breathless, Harry rested his forehead against hers, his eyes closed as if savoring the moment. "I've been wanting to do that since I saw you fixing your blouse in my car window," he admitted with a small laugh. "I've been wanting you to do that since you helped me down from that ladder in the dark," Mila replied, her hands resting lightly on his chest. Feeling the strong, steady beat of his heart beneath her palm, Harry opened his eyes, his gaze serious despite the smile lingering on his lips. "This complicates things, doesn't it?" "It does," Mila agreed, her own expression sobering. "You're my boss. I don't want to take advantage of that position," Harry said, his thumb tracing a gentle pattern on her cheek, "or put you in an uncomfortable situation." "You haven't," Mila assured him. "This feels—" She searched for the right word, settling on the simplest truth. "Right. It feels right." Harry's smile returned, warming his expression. "It does, doesn't it? Like finding the perfect word in a sentence you've been struggling to write." The literary metaphor made Mila laugh softly. "Of course you'd compare it to writing." "What would you compare it to?" Harry asked, curious. Mila thought for a moment. "Like hearing a piece of music for the first time and recognizing it somehow, as if you've known it all along." Harry's expression softened. "I like that better," he murmured, before leaning in to kiss her again, more confidently this time. This kiss spoke of discovery and desire, a mutual exploration that left them both wanting more. When they pulled apart, Mila could see the same hunger in Harry's eyes that she felt burning through her veins. "We should probably leave the store before I forget all about professional boundaries entirely," Harry said, his voice husky. Mila nodded, though she made no move to step out of his embrace. "Probably. I could drive you home," he suggested, his fingers playing with a curl at the nape of her neck. "You could," Mila agreed, tilting her head slightly to give him better access, her eyes never leaving his. "And then what?" Harry asked. The question heavy with implication. Mila took a deep breath, knowing they stood at another threshold. "And then I might invite you in for coffee." "Just coffee?" Harry's eyebrow rose slightly, a flicker of mischief in his expression. "To start with," Mila replied with a boldness that surprised even her, "I've always believed that the best stories unfold one page at a time." Harry's laugh was warm against her lips as he kissed her again, briefly, but with a promise of more to come. "I've always been a fan of slow, careful reading," he agreed, savoring every word, every nuance, every touch, Mila added softly, her hand coming up to trace the line of his jaw. "Every touch," he echoed, turning his face to press a kiss to her palm. With visible reluctance, they finally stepped apart, their hands finding each other again as they moved through the store, turning off lights and gathering their belongings. The easy familiarity of these closing rituals now charged with new meaning, every glance and accidental touch an extension of their moonlit dance. As Harry locked the door of Harmony Books behind them, Mila looked up at the night sky, at the same full moon that had witnessed their first kiss among the bookshelves. A sense of possibility expanded within her chest, as vast and luminous as the stars scattered across the darkness above. "Ready?" Harry asked, his hand outstretched once more. Mila placed her hand in his, feeling the perfect fit of their fingers interlacing. "Ready," she confirmed, and together they walked toward his car, and whatever story awaited them in the pages, yet to be turned. Chapter 5. The Garden. Picnic 3 weeks had passed since that moonlit evening in the bookstore, and Mila and Harry had fallen into a new rhythm, professional colleagues during store hours, with only the occasional lingering glance or subtle touch to betray the change in their relationship, and something much more intimate after closing time. They had been careful, discreet, mindful of the complications their relationship could create in the workplace. November had brought cooler temperatures and the first hints of the winter to come. But today, a Sunday in mid-November, with unexpected warmth, felt like autumn's last gift before surrendering to the cold. The bookstore closed on Sundays, leaving their time entirely their own. As Harry's car wound through tree-lined streets that gradually gave way to more open countryside, Mila's curiosity piqued. "Are you finally going to tell me where we're going?" she asked, watching his profile as he drove, admiring the way the afternoon sunlight played across his features. Harry smiled, the dimple appearing in his right cheek. What would be the fun in that? Besides, we're almost there. True to his word, he turned onto a narrow lane just a few minutes later, eventually pulling up to a small stone building with an arched wooden door. Beyond it, Mila could glimpse what looked like extensive gardens, the Hillcrest Botanical Gardens, Harry announced, looking pleased with himself, but not the public entrance. "A friend of mine is the head botanist here, and he's given me access to a private section that's closed for renovation." Mila's eyes widened in delight. "I've always wanted to visit here, but I never seem to find the time." "I know," Harry said, reaching across to tuck a stray curl behind her ear, his fingers lingering against her cheek. "You mentioned it that rainy day in the car, when we were talking about your mother's love of rare flowers. I've been planning this ever since." The realization that he had remembered such a small detail from their first real conversation and had arranged this special visit because of it made Mila's heart swell. She leaned across the console to kiss him, a soft, sweet expression of gratitude that quickly deepened into something more passionate. "Thank you," she murmured against his lips when they finally parted. "We haven't even gone in yet," Harry pointed out with a laugh. "Save some of that appreciation for later." He reached into the back seat, retrieving a wicker basket and a blanket that Mila hadn't noticed earlier. "I thought we could have a picnic among the flowers." Inside the garden, away from the manicured public areas, they found a wilder, more intimate landscape. Paths winding through stands of tall grasses and late-blooming wildflowers, secluded benches nestled beneath trees with the last of their autumn foliage, and small clearings carpeted with soft moss. The renovation work was clearly focused on a different section, leaving this area peaceful and completely deserted. "This way," Harry said, leading her down a narrow path that opened suddenly into a hidden meadow. A small stream bubbled along. One edge and a majestic oak tree provided dappled shade over part of the clearing. The grass was dotted with tiny white and purple wildflowers, creating a natural carpet that seemed designed for their picnic blanket. "It's perfect," Mila breathed, turning in a slow circle to take in the beauty of the secluded spot. Harry spread the blanket beneath the oak tree and began unpacking the basket. A bottle of wine, 2 glasses, an assortment of cheeses, fresh bread, fruit, and chocolate-dipped strawberries for dessert. He'd thought of everything, even including a small vase with a single perfect rose. "You've outdone yourself," Mila said, settling onto the blanket beside him. "Nothing but the best for you," Harry replied, the sincerity in his voice making the simple words feel like a precious gift. They ate leisurely, feeding each other bites of cheese and fruit, talking and laughing with the easy familiarity they had developed over the past weeks. The wine and the warm November sun created a golden haze of contentment around them. When they had finished eating, Harry stretched out on the blanket, propping himself up on one elbow to look at Mila. From the basket, he pulled out a small, leather-bound book. "I brought something to read to you," he said almost shyly. "Poetry." Mila's heart melted at the gesture. "What did you choose?" "Pablo Neruda, Love Sonnets." Harry opened the book to a marked page. "I thought, since we're surrounded by nature's beauty." He began to read, his deep voice giving the passionate verses a sensual resonance that made Mila's skin tingle. The Spanish poet's words of desire and devotion flowed around them like the gentle breeze that rustled the oak leaves overhead. As Harry read, Mila watched his face, the way his expression changed with the rhythm of the poems, how his eyes occasionally lifted from the page to meet hers during particularly intimate lines. When he reached a verse about the beloved's hands, he took Mila's hand in his free one, his thumb tracing patterns on her palm as he continued reading. The simple touch, combined with the poetry's intensity, sent waves of warmth through Mila's body. She found herself moving closer to Harry, drawn by an irresistible gravity. When he finished the sonnet, Harry closed the book and set it aside, his eyes never leaving Mila's face. "There's something about poetry," he said softly, "that expresses things I might not have the courage to say myself." "What things?" Mila asked, her voice equally soft, though they were alone in the meadow with only butterflies and distant birdsong for company. Harry's gaze became more intense. "That since I met you, colors seem brighter, that your laugh makes me feel like I've discovered something precious, that when I'm not with you, I'm counting the hours until I can be again." Mila felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes, moved by his unexpected eloquence. She leaned forward, closing the small distance between them, and kissed him with all the emotion his words had stirred in her. Harry responded immediately, his arms encircling her, drawing her against him as the kiss deepened. They sank back onto the blanket together, the dappled sunlight playing across their entwined forms as hands began to explore with greater urgency than they had allowed themselves before. Mila found herself lost in sensation, the solid warmth of Harry's body against hers, the gentle touch of his fingers as they traced the curve of her hip, the taste of wine on his lips as he kissed a path down her neck. The poetry he had read seemed to flow through her veins, igniting a fire that had been smoldering since that first moonlit kiss in the bookstore. They moved together on the blanket, boundaries dissolving with each caress, the secret garden cocooning them in privacy and beauty. Harry's hands trembled slightly as they explored the gentle curves of Mila's body, his touch reverent yet increasingly urgent. "Are you sure?" he whispered against her neck, his breath warm against her skin. Mila answered, by guiding his face back to hers, her kiss conveying everything words could not. In this moment, in this hidden paradise, nothing existed but the two of them, their connection transcending the physical, merging hearts and souls as completely as their bodies longed to merge. A distant roll of thunder broke the spell, causing them both to look up at clouds that had begun to gather on the horizon. Harry sighed, resting his forehead against Mila's. "Nature's timing leaves something to be desired," he murmured with a rueful smile. Mila laughed softly, her fingers playing with the hair at the nape of his neck. "Perhaps it's reminding us that some things are worth savoring slowly." Harry's eyes darkened at her words. "You're right," he agreed, pressing a gentle kiss to her lips. "And I want everything about us to be perfect." They reluctantly separated, straightening clothing and hair with shy smiles and lingering touches. As Harry began to pack up their picnic, the first fat raindrops fell, spattering the blanket. "Should hurry," Mila said, helping him gather their things. But Harry suddenly paused, looking at her with such intensity that Mila felt it like a physical touch. "Dance with me first," he said, holding out his hand. "In the rain?" Mila asked, surprised, but already placing her hand in his. "Especially in the rain," Harry replied, pulling her close as the shower intensified, cool droplets cascading over them. They moved together in a slow circle, their impromptu dance accompanied by the percussion of raindrops on leaves and the distant rumble of thunder. Water plastered Mila's dress to her skin and turned Harry's shirt translucent, but neither cared as they held each other, faces tilted upward to the cleansing rain. "I'm falling in love with you, Mila Moon," Harry said suddenly, his voice barely audible above the storm, but his words clear as crystal to Mila's heart. "I think I have been since that first morning when you fixed your blouse in my car window." Mila's breath caught at the naked emotion in his eyes, at the vulnerability of his admission. She reached up to touch his face, raindrops mingling with the tears of joy that had begun to flow. "I'm falling in love with you too, Harry Mason," she replied, her voice steady despite the trembling of her heart. "More deeply than I ever thought possible." Their kiss tasted of rain and truth and the sweet promise of a future neither had dared imagine before this moment. Around them, the garden glistened, every drop of water capturing the world in miniature, their world, newly born in the cathedral of nature. Later, drenched and laughing, they ran back to the car, the picnic basket bumping against Harry's leg, the blanket a sodden bundle under Mila's arm. In the shelter of the vehicle, Harry turned to Mila, reaching out to brush a wet strand of hair from her cheek. "I don't want this day to end," he confessed. "It doesn't have to," Mila replied simply, her hand covering his where it rested against her face. "Come home with me." The drive back to the city seemed both endless and too short, their hands clasped on the console between them, the air heavy with anticipation. When they finally reached Mila's apartment, soaked clothes were abandoned in a trail from the door to the bedroom, where they discovered each other fully at last. No interruptions, no hesitations, just the perfect communion of two souls who had found their matching halves. Afterward, as they lay entwined beneath Mila's soft sheets, Harry traced lazy patterns on her bare shoulder, his expression one of wonder and contentment. "What are you thinking?" Mila asked, her head resting on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "That some stories really do have happy beginnings," Harry replied, pressing a kiss to the top of her head, "and that ours is just getting started." Outside, the rain continued to fall, a gentle backdrop to the new chapter they had begun writing together, a love story reflected not in car windows or bookstore moonlight, but in the depths of each other's eyes. Chapter 6. Stolen Moments 2. Months had passed since the rainy day in the garden, and autumn had deepened into winter. Mid-January brought the first heavy snow of the season, transforming the city into a glittering wonderland. Inside Harmony Books, preparations for the store's annual Winter Literary Gala were underway, an elegant evening event that brought together authors, publishers, and devoted readers to celebrate the year's literary achievements. Mila adjusted, a display of this year's award-winning novels, aware of Harry watching her from across the room, where he was directing the setup of a small stage for readings. Their eyes met briefly, a current of electricity passing between them despite the dozens of people milling about the store. 2 months of deepening intimacy had done nothing to diminish the thrill of these glances. If anything, knowing what lay beneath Harry's composed professional exterior, his passion, his tenderness, the way he whispered her name in the darkness, made these public moments of restraint all the more charged with anticipation. They had been careful at work, maintaining a respectful professional distance that gave no hint of their evenings and weekends spent wrapped in each other's arms. Only Sophie, the assistant manager with her perceptive eyes and kind smile, seemed to have guessed the truth, offering Mila a knowing wink when Harry's hand had lingered a moment too long while passing her a stack of invitations. "Everything looks perfect," Harry said, approaching Mila's display after finishing with the stage setup. His voice was casual, appropriate for colleagues, but his eyes held the warmth reserved only for her. "You have an artist's eye for composition." "Thank you," Mila replied, equally professional, though she longed to reach out and straighten his slightly crooked tie. "I think we're almost ready for tonight." "Almost," Harry agreed. "Just a few finishing touches." He glanced around to ensure no one was within earshot before adding in a lower voice, "You're going to take my breath away in that dress you showed me." Mila felt heat rise to her cheeks at the memory of modeling the midnight blue evening gown for him in her apartment, and what had followed when he had helped her remove it again. "Behave yourself, Mr. Mason," she murmured, though she couldn't suppress a smile. "We have work to do." Harry's answering smile was both innocent and wicked. "I'm being the very model of professional restraint. For now." The promise in those last 2 words stayed with Mila throughout the afternoon as they completed the preparations. By 6 o'clock, the transformation of Harmony Books was complete. Soft lighting illuminated artfully arranged displays. White-clothed tables held champagne, flutes and elegant hors d'oeuvres, and discreet flower arrangements added color and fragrance to the space. "Go home and change," Harry told the staff as they gathered for a final review. "Everyone back by 7:30, please. Our guests arrive at 8. As the others dispersed, Harry caught Mila's hand briefly, out of sight behind a bookshelf. "I'll pick you up at 7, he said, his thumb brushing across her knuckles in a caress that sent shivers up her arm. "I'll be ready," she promised, allowing herself a moment to lean into him before reluctantly pulling away. At her apartment, Mila prepared with care, her excitement building with each step of her transformation. The midnight blue dress with its flowing skirt and fitted bodice that left her shoulders bare made her feel both elegant and sensual. She arranged her curls in a sophisticated updo, leaving a few tendrils loose to frame her face, and added the delicate sapphire earrings that had been her mother's, a treasured connection to the woman who had filled their home with music and beauty. Harry arrived precisely at 7, resplendent in a perfectly tailored black suit that emphasized his broad shoulders and trim waist. His reaction when Mila opened the door was everything she had hoped for. A moment of stunned silence, followed by an appreciative gaze that traveled slowly from her face to her silver heels and back again. "You are," he said finally, his voice husky with admiration, "the most beautiful woman I have ever seen." Mila smiled, her own gaze equally appreciative of how the suit transformed Harry's casual handsomeness into something breathtakingly sophisticated. "You clean up pretty well yourself, Mr. Mason." Harry stepped inside, closing the door behind him, his eyes never leaving hers. "We have to leave in 15 minutes to be back at the store on time," he said, advancing slowly toward her. 15 minutes, Mila echoed, already reaching for him, careful not to wrinkle his immaculate suit too badly. "Whatever shall we do with that time?" His answer was a kiss that was both tender and urgent, his hands cupping her face with exquisite gentleness despite the passion that radiated from him. Mila melted into him, mindful of her lipstick, but unwilling to deny herself this moment of connection before the public performance of professional detachment that awaited them. When they finally separated, Harry's eyes were dark with desire. "You make me forget everything else," he murmured, his forehead resting against hers, "including very important literary galas." Mila laughed softly, smoothing his tie, which had indeed become crooked. "We'd better go before I'm tempted to suggest we skip the whole thing." The gala was a swirl of elegance and intellectual energy. Authors in evening wear discussing their craft, publishers scouting for new talent, readers starstruck in the presence of their literary heroes. Harmony books glowed with warmth and conversation, champagne flowing freely as connections were made and celebrated. Mila moved through the crowd with professional grace, discussing literature with authors and patrons alike, her knowledge and passion for books earning approving nods from the publishing professionals in attendance. Occasionally, she would catch glimpses of Harry doing the same, charming a reclusive poet, laughing with a local reviewer, raising a glass in toast with the mayor who had stopped by to support the cultural event. Throughout the evening, they orbited each other like binary stars, drawn together by invisible gravity, only to be pulled apart again by their social duties. Each time they passed, a brief touch, his hand at the small of her back, her fingers brushing his as she handed him a fresh glass of champagne, reignited the awareness that had been smoldering between them all night. After an hour of this exquisite torture, Mila found herself cornered by a particularly talkative literary critic whose theories on postmodern narrative techniques seemed endless. Nodding politely while her attention wandered, she suddenly felt the lightest touch on her bare shoulder, Harry passing behind her, his fingertips trailing across her skin in a caress that could have been accidental but was anything but. As he continued past without pausing, he murmured just loudly enough for her ears alone, "Rare book room, 5 minutes." Her pulse quickened at the invitation. The rare book room, located in a quiet corner of the 3rd floor, was kept locked during public events to protect the valuable volumes inside. As the owner, Harry was one of only 2 people with a key. Excusing herself from the critic with a polite reference to hostess duties, Mila made her way casually through the crowd, pausing to chat briefly with guests to avoid any appearance of hurry. When she was certain no one was paying particular attention, she slipped up the spiral staircase to the 3rd floor. The sounds of the party faded as she walked down the dimly lit hallway toward the rare book room. When she reached the ornate wooden door, she found it slightly ajar, a sliver of warm light spilling out into the corridor. Mila glanced back to ensure she was unobserved before slipping inside and closing the door quietly behind her. The rare bookroom was a sanctuary of literary treasures, first editions protected in glass cases, ancient manuscripts preserved in climate-controlled displays, signed copies of classics arranged on special shelves. The lighting was subdued to protect the delicate pages, creating an intimate atmosphere of reverent hush. Harry stood by one of the display cases, his back to the door, apparently examining a leather-bound volume of Shakespeare's sonnets. At the soft click of the door closing, he turned, his expression transforming from composed host to something far more primal as he took in the sight of Mila standing there in her midnight blue gown. "I was beginning to think you weren't coming," he said, his voice low with anticipation. "And miss a private tour of the rare book collection?" Mila replied with a smile that held equal parts innocence and invitation. "I wouldn't dream of it." Harry moved toward her with deliberate slowness, his eyes never leaving hers. "Do you know what I was just reading?" he asked, gesturing toward the volume of sonnets. "Tell me," Mila said, not moving as he approached, enjoying the delicious tension of anticipation. "Shall I compare thee to a summer's day?" Harry quoted softly, stopping just inches from her. "Thou art more lovely and more temperate." Sonnet 18, Mila identified, her breath quickening. "Rather appropriate for a winter evening, don't you think?" "I was thinking more of the ending," Harry murmured, reaching out to trace the line of her collarbone with feather-light fingers. "So long as men can breathe or eyes can see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee. Immortality through art," Mila whispered, shivering at his touch. "Immortality through love," Harry countered, his hand sliding up to cup the nape of her neck. "Some things are eternal, Mila. What I feel for you, I've never experienced anything like it." The sudden shift from playful seduction to heartfelt confession caught Mila off guard. She saw in Harry's eyes not just desire, but a depth of emotion that matched the growing certainty in her own heart. "Harry," she began, but he placed a gentle finger against her lips. "I know we said we'd take this slowly," he said, his voice husky with emotion. "And we can, but I need you to know I love you, Mila Moon, completely, irrevocably." The words hung in the air between them, powerful and transformative. Mila felt tears prick at her eyes as joy expanded within her chest. "I love you too," she answered simply, the truth of it resonating through her entire being. "With all that I am." Harry's face softened with wonder and relief, as if despite all they had shared, he had still feared his feelings might not be fully returned. He lowered his head slowly, giving her time to see the love shining in his eyes before his lips met hers in a kiss that felt like coming home and embarking on a grand adventure all at once. The kiss deepened, passion flaring between them with an intensity heightened by their declarations. Harry backed Mila gently against the door, his body pressing against hers with restrained urgency. Her hands slid inside his jacket, feeling the heat of him through the fine fabric of his shirt as his lips left hers to trail fire along her jaw and down the sensitive column of her throat. "We shouldn't," Mila gasped, even as her head tilted to give him better access and her hands clutched him closer. "The gala." "Let them wait," Harry murmured against her skin, his hands sliding down to her waist, then lower, gathering the flowing fabric of her skirt. "I've been dying to touch you all night." The rational part of Mila's mind knew they should return to their guests, that their absence would eventually be noticed, that the rare bookroom was no place for the passion building between them. But as Harry's hand found bare skin above her stockings, rational thought fled, replaced by a need as ancient and powerful as the literary masterpieces that surrounded them. Later, minutes or eons, Mila couldn't tell, they leaned against each other, breathing hard, clothes hastily straightened, but composure still elusive. "We should get back," Harry said reluctantly, pressing his lips to her temple. "I'm surprised Sophie hasn't come looking for us yet." "She probably has," Mila replied, with a soft laugh, smoothing his hair where her fingers had disheveled it. "And wisely decided not to knock," Harry chuckled, the sound rumbling pleasantly against Mila's cheek where it rested against his chest. "Remind me to give her a raise." They separated slowly, each helping the other restore order to their appearance. As Harry adjusted Mila's necklace, which had twisted during their passionate encounter, his expression grew serious again. "I meant what I said, you know," he said quietly. "I love you, not just in stolen moments like this, but in everyday life, in morning coffee and evening conversations, in disagreements and reconciliations, in all of it." Mila placed her hand over his where it rested against her heart. "I know," she said simply. "I feel the same way." As they prepared to return to the gala, Harry took Mila's face between his hands, his thumbs gently caressing her cheeks. "Soon," he promised, "we won't have to hide anymore. I want everyone to know how much I love you." The promise hung between them, sweet and full of possibility. Mila nodded, too moved to speak, and reached up to kiss him one more time, tender now rather than passionate, a seal on the vows they had just exchanged. With reluctance, they separated and left the rare bookroom, returning to the gala by different routes to avoid suspicion. As Mila descended the spiral staircase, she caught sight of Harry already back in the crowd, smiling at something an elderly patron was saying. As if sensing her gaze, he looked up, their eyes meeting across the store filled with literary luminaries. In that moment, surrounded by the greatest love stories ever written, Mila knew that none could compare to the one she and Harry were creating. Together, a tale of passion and tenderness, of unexpected beginnings and promises of forever, written not on pages but on their hearts. Chapter 7. Storm and shelter January arrived with a bitter cold that gripped the city in icy stillness. Inside Harmony Books, warmth prevailed as customers sought refuge from the winter chill, browsing shelves with gloved hands and unwinding scarves. As the store's heating enveloped them in comfort, for Mila and Harry, the new year had brought a resolution. After their declarations in the rare book room during the gala, they had decided to be open about their relationship. The announcement to the staff had been met with knowing smiles rather than surprise. Apparently, their attempts at discretion had fooled no one. "Sophie told me she knew the first week," Harry had admitted with a rueful laugh as they lay in bed that night. "Said we looked at each other like characters in a romance novel." "Well, we are in the book business," Mila had replied, nestling closer against his chest. "We should know our tropes." Now, a month into their public relationship, the initial flurry of interest had settled into acceptance. If anything, the staff seemed pleased to see their boss so obviously happy, and customers who noticed their subtle displays of affection, a touch on the arm as they passed, the way Harry's eyes followed Mila across the room, often commented on what a lovely couple they made. The only cloud on their horizon was the weather forecast for the weekend. Harry had planned a surprise getaway to a small beachfront cottage owned by a friend, a belated Christmas gift for Mila. Despite meteorologists' warnings about an approaching storm system, he remained determined to proceed. "It'll be romantic," he insisted when Mila expressed concern. "Waves crashing on the shore, wind howling around the cottage while we're warm inside. Besides, the worst of it isn't supposed to hit until Sunday evening. We'll be back by then." Mila relented, unable to resist the boyish enthusiasm that overtook Harry whenever he spoke of their weekend plans. "All right, but if it looks bad on Sunday morning, we leave early." "Deal, deal," Harry agreed, sealing the promise with a kiss. "Now help me pick out which books to bring. A beach cottage in winter requires very specific reading material." Saturday morning dawned clear and cold, perfect for driving to the coast. They set out early, the car packed with overnight bags, groceries, wine, and a carefully curated selection of books. As they left the city behind, Mila felt the lingering tension of the work week melt away, replaced by anticipation for precious time alone with Harry. The beach cottage proved to be everything Harry had promised, a charming two-story structure on a private stretch of coastline, its weathered cedar exterior and blue shutters giving it a timeless maritime character. Inside, a stone fireplace dominated the living room, with comfortable furnishings arranged to maximize the spectacular ocean view through large picture windows. "What do you think?" Harry asked, watching Mila's face as she explored the space, running her fingers along the built-in bookshelves that lined one wall. "It's perfect," she replied, turning to him with shining eyes. Absolutely perfect. They spent the afternoon walking along the deserted winter beach, bundled against the cold, their gloved hands intertwined. The ocean stretched grey and limitless. Before them, waves capped with white foam racing to shore in endless rhythm. They collected shells and sea glass, laughed as they dodged the occasional ambitious wave, and talked about everything and nothing. "I've never been to the beach in winter before," Mila confessed, as they paused to watch a flock of gulls wheeling against the pale sky. "It has a different kind of beauty than in summer." "More honest somehow," Harry agreed, his arm around her shoulders. No pretense, just raw power and endurance. He looked down at her, his expression suddenly serious. "Like love at its core, when you strip away all the romantic trappings." Mila leaned into him, understanding exactly what he meant. Their love had begun with the flutter of attraction, the dance of courtship, but had quickly revealed itself as something sturdier, a foundation that could weather storms both literal and metaphorical. "Speaking of raw power," she said, noting the darkening clouds on the horizon, "I think we should head back. That storm might be arriving earlier than predicted." They returned to the cottage as the wind began to strengthen, bringing with it the first spatters of rain. Harry built a fire, while Mila prepared a simple but delicious dinner, and they ate by firelight as the weather worsened outside. By the time they had cleared the dishes, the storm had arrived in full force. Wind lashed at the windows, rain came in sideways sheets, and the crash of waves against the shore had intensified to a thunderous roar. "So much for leaving early tomorrow," Harry said, peering out at the tempest. "I think we might be here until Monday." Mila wrapped her arms around him from behind, resting her cheek against his back. "There are worse places to be stranded." They settled on the sofa before the fire, Mila curled against Harry's side as he read aloud from one of the books they'd brought, a collection of seafaring tales that seemed perfectly suited to the soundtrack of the storm. The combination of the crackling fire, Harry's deep voice, and the wild symphony outside created a cocoon of intimacy that made Mila feel as though they were the only two people in the world. When a particularly violent gust of wind rattled the windows, Mila nestled closer. "Do you think we're safe here?" Harry pressed a kiss to the top of her head. "The cottage has stood for over 50 years. It's weathered worse storms than this." He set the book aside, his arms tightening around her. "Besides, I'd never let anything happen to you." The simple declaration, spoken with such certainty, filled Mila with warmth that had nothing to do with the fire. She turned in his embrace to look up at him, finding his eyes dark with an emotion that mirrored the intensity she felt. "I know," she said softly. "That's one of the countless reasons I love you." Harry's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb tracing the curve of her cheek with tender precision. "Tell me the others," he requested, his voice a low rumble that she felt as much as heard. Mila smiled, turning to press a kiss into his palm. "I love the way you treat books like old friends," she began. "The way you remember tiny details about people. Your laugh, especially when I've surprised it out of you. The little frown you get when you're concentrating on inventory spreadsheets." With each reason, Harry's expression grew more heated, his eyes never leaving hers. "Go on," he encouraged when she paused. "I love how passionate you are about the things that matter to you," Mila continued, shifting to straddle his lap, her hands framing his face. "How gentle you can be, despite your strength. The way you kiss me like you're discovering something miraculous every time." As if to demonstrate, Harry pulled her down to him, his lips capturing hers in a kiss that started tender but quickly blazed into something more urgent. Mila melted against him, her body responding to his with the familiar yet always thrilling rush of desire. They made love there before the fire, the storm providing a wild counterpoint to their passion. Every touch, every whispered endearment, every shared moment of pleasure seemed heightened by the elemental force raging outside, as if the universe itself was acknowledging the power of what they had found in each other. Afterward, wrapped in a soft blanket in each other's arms, they watched the flames dance in comfortable silence. Mila traced idle patterns on Harry's chest, her head tucked beneath his chin, feeling utterly content despite the storm's continued assault on their sanctuary. "A penny for your thoughts," Harry murmured eventually, his fingers playing with a strand of her hair. Mila smiled against his skin. "I was thinking about reflections," she admitted, "about how sometimes we catch glimpses of truth in unexpected places. Like when I saw my reflection in your car window that first morning. I was just trying to fix my blouse, but somehow the universe was showing me a future I couldn't imagine yet." Harry was quiet for a moment, considering her words. "You know," he said finally, "there's a theory that people don't fall in love gradually. They just take time to recognize it, as if the love was there all along, waiting to be discovered. Like it was already written in some cosmic book," Mila suggested, warming to the idea. "And we're just turning the pages, revealing what was always meant to be." "Exactly." Harry shifted slightly to look into her eyes. "I think I recognized it that first morning, though I couldn't name it then. Something about seeing you there, completely unguarded before you realized I was watching. It was like glimpsing something precious and rare." A flash of lightning illuminated the room, followed almost immediately by a tremendous crash of thunder. The lights flickered once, twice, and then went out, leaving only the fire to light the space. "Perfect timing," Mila laughed softly. "The universe providing mood lighting for your declarations." Harry chuckled, the sound a pleasant vibration against her cheek as she settled back against his chest. "The universe has good taste." They remained before the fire as the storm reached its peak, adding logs occasionally to maintain the warm glow that kept the darkness at bay. Outside, the elements raged, but inside their shelter, a different kind of elemental force prevailed. The deep, abiding connection between two people who had found in each other both safe harbor and thrilling adventure. As the night deepened and the fire burned low, Harry stood and held out his hand to Mila. "Let's go upstairs," he suggested, his eyes reflecting the golden firelight. "I want to fall asleep, listening to the storm with you in my arms." Mila placed her hand in his without hesitation, allowing him to lead her through the darkened cottage to the bedroom upstairs. The large windows there offered a spectacular view of the storm-tossed ocean, lightning periodically illuminating the churning waves. They slipped beneath cool sheets that quickly warmed with their shared body heat. Harry pulled Mila close, her back against his chest, his arm a secure weight across her waist. The rhythmic sound of his breathing, combined with the storm's relentless symphony, created the perfect lullaby. Just as Mila was drifting toward sleep, Harry spoke, his voice quiet but clear in the darkness. "Move in with me." The unexpected words brought Mila fully awake. She turned in his arms to face him, though she could barely make out his features in the dim light. "What did you say?" "Move in with me," Harry repeated, more confident now. "Your lease is up next month. Instead of renewing it, come live with me. Or we could find a new place together, whatever you want. I just know I want to fall asleep with you every night, not just when we can arrange it around work schedules and other obligations." Mila's heart raced with a mixture of excitement and uncertainty. It was a big step, one they hadn't discussed before. "Are you sure? We've only been together a few months." "I've never been more sure of anything," Harry said, his hand finding hers beneath the covers. "I love you, Mila. I want to build a life with you, starting with sharing a home." He paused, then added, "But if you think it's too soon, I understand. There's no rush." Mila thought about what it would mean, waking up with Harry every morning, creating shared routines and traditions, transforming a space into their home together. The image filled her with a sense of rightness that overshadowed any lingering doubts. "Yes," she said simply, squeezing his hand. "I'll move in with you." She felt rather than saw Harry smile in the darkness. He pulled her closer, his kiss expressing all the joy her acceptance had given him. Outside, the storm continued unabated, but its fury seemed diminished somehow, as if recognizing that within the cottage, something stronger and more enduring had taken root. As they drifted towards sleep, wrapped in each other's warmth, Mila realized that they had found in each other what humans had sought since time immemorial. Not just passion or companionship, but that rare and precious alchemy that transforms two separate lives into something greater than the sum of its parts. In Harry's arms, with the storm raging around their shelter, Mila felt she had discovered the true meaning of home, not a place, but a person. And no matter what storms might come in the future, they would weather them together, finding in each other both refuge and the courage to face whatever lay ahead. Chapter 8. The painting spring arrived in gentle waves of warmth and color, transforming the city from winter's monochrome into a vibrant canvas of renewal. For Mila and Harry, the season brought changes that mirrored nature's awakening, the merging of their separate lives into a shared existence. They had chosen to move into Harry's apartment, a spacious two-bedroom in an old converted warehouse, with high ceilings, exposed brick walls, and large windows that flooded the space with natural light. The second bedroom had been converted into a home library, with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves that housed their combined collections. Shakespeare nestled against Morrison, Austen alongside Achebe, their literary tastes complementing each other, as perfectly as their lives had begun to do. The process of combining their possessions had revealed new facets of each other. Harry discovered Mila's collection of vintage jazz records inherited from her father, while she unearthed his surprising passion for exotic teas gathered from his travels before settling down with the bookstore. Each revelation, however small, deepened their understanding of one another, creating a tapestry of shared knowledge that strengthened their bond. On this particular Saturday morning, sunlight streamed through the bedroom windows, creating patterns on the hardwood floor. Harry had left early for the bookstore, needing to meet with a rare book dealer who was passing through town. Mila stretched luxuriously in the empty bed, enjoying the quiet morning to herself, a rarity given their usually synchronized schedules. After breakfast, she moved to the smaller of the two closets in their bedroom. Unlike the main closet, which now housed a harmonious blend of their everyday clothing, this one contained items from her old apartment that had yet to find their place. In their shared home, most were mementos and keepsakes she hadn't sorted through yet. Among them was a large portfolio case she had deliberately kept closed during the move. Taking a deep breath, Mila pulled it out and carried it to the living room, where the morning light would be best. She unzipped the canvas cover with careful fingers, revealing the contents she had kept hidden not just from Harry, but from most people in her life. Inside were paintings. Her paintings. Art had been her first love before literature had captured her heart. In the years following her parents' death, she had channeled her grief into creating, using color and shape to express what words could not. Though she had studied literature, In college, art had remained her private sanctuary, a means of processing emotions too complex for language. The most recent canvas, still smelling faintly of oils, was one she had completed shortly after moving in with Harry. She had worked on it in secret during the hours he spent at the bookstore, and she was home alone. Now, examining it in the clear morning light, she felt both pride and vulnerability. The painting revealed as much about her heart as any diary could have done. It depicted Harry, though not in a traditional portrait style. She had captured him in a moment of unconscious grace, seated in his favorite armchair by the window of the bookstore, afternoon light streaming around him as he read from a leather-bound volume. The focus was not just on his physical form, though she had rendered that with loving attention to detail. The strong line of his jaw, the slight curl of hair at his temple, the expressive hands that held the book with such care. What made the painting special was how she had portrayed the light, not just the physical sunbeams, but a subtle luminosity that seemed to emanate from within him, radiating outward to touch everything in his vicinity. It was her vision of him, the essence of Harry as she experienced him, a source of warmth and illumination in her life. Mila was so absorbed in examining the painting that she didn't hear the apartment door open, only when a shadow fell across the canvas did she realize she was no longer alone. "The dealer cancelled," Harry began, then stopped abruptly as he registered what she was looking at. "Mila," she looked up quickly, caught between the impulse to hide the painting and the knowledge that it was too late. Harry stood frozen, his eyes fixed on the canvas with an expression she couldn't interpret. I was just..." Mila struggled to find words, suddenly feeling exposed in a way that was both terrifying and liberating. "I paint sometimes." Harry knelt beside her, his gaze never leaving the image she had created of him. "You painted this?" he asked, his voice hushed with what she now recognized as awe rather than displeasure. Mila nodded, watching his face carefully. "I've been painting since I was a teenager. It's always been private, something I do just for myself." Harry finally tore his eyes from the canvas to look at her, and the emotion in his expression made her breath catch. "It's extraordinary," he said simply. "I had no idea you had this talent. There's a lot you can express in a painting that you can't put into words," Mila explained, relaxing slightly at his positive reaction. "Even for someone who loves literature as much as I do, sometimes colors and shapes can say things that language and can't." Harry returned his attention to the painting, studying it with the same careful consideration he gave to first editions. "The way you've captured the light," he said softly. "Is that really how you see me?" The question held a vulnerability that touched Mila deeply. She reached out to take his hand, threading their fingers together. "Yes," she admitted, "that's exactly how I see you." Harry was silent for a long moment, still looking at the canvas. When he finally spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. "No one has ever seen me like that before." The simple statement contained multitudes, a history of being appreciated for surface qualities or practical abilities rather than his essence, of being known but not truly seen. In creating this painting, Mila had given him the rare gift of being witnessed at his core. "I've been working on it since we moved in together," she explained. "I wanted to capture what you mean to me, how you've brought light into my life." Harry turned to her then, his free hand coming up to trace the curve of her cheek with gentle fingers. "You've done the same for me," he said, his eyes holding hers with an intensity that made her heart race. "Before you, I had the bookstore, my passion for literature, but there was a solitary quality to my life that I had accepted as inevitable." His thumb brushed across her lower lip in a caress that sent shivers down her spine. "You changed that," he continued. "You filled empty spaces I didn't even know existed." Mila leaned into his touch, overwhelmed by the depth of feeling between them. "That's what love does," she said softly. "It completes us without diminishing our individuality." Harry smiled, the expression transforming his face with the very luminosity she had captured in paint. "The literature professor and the secret artist," he mused. "We're full of surprises, aren't we?" "Life would be boring otherwise," Mila replied, returning his smile. Harry's gaze returned to the painting, his expression becoming thoughtful. "Would you show me the others?" he asked, gesturing to the portfolio that contained the rest of her work. Mila hesitated only briefly before nodding. Sharing her art with him felt like the final barrier falling between them, the last private chamber of her heart opening to his gentle inspection. One by one, she showed him the paintings that chronicled her journey, landscapes from her childhood, abstract expressions of grief after losing her parents, studies of light and shadow that reflected her evolving emotional states, and more recently, images inspired by their relationship. The bookstore at dawn, the beach cottage during the storm, the intertwined shadows they cast while dancing in the moonlight. Harry examined each with reverent attention, occasionally asking questions about her technique or inspiration, but mostly absorbing them in appreciative silence. When they had gone through all of them, he sat back on his heels, regarding her with new understanding. "You're extraordinary," he said finally. "These paintings, they're like glimpses into your soul. Thank you for sharing them with me." The simple gratitude in his voice brought tears to Mila's eyes. "You're the first person I've shown them to in years," she admitted. "Not because I was hiding them exactly, but because they're so personal." "I understand," Harry assured her, squeezing her hand. "They're extensions of yourself." He paused, seeming to consider something carefully before speaking again. "Would you consider displaying some of them? Not necessarily for sale, but perhaps on the walls of our home, or even a small exhibition at the bookstore." The suggestion both thrilled and terrified Mila. "I don't know," she said honestly. "They've been private for so long. The idea of others seeing them is daunting." "Of course," Harry said immediately. "It was just a thought. They're yours to share or keep private as you wish." His immediate respect for her boundaries, even in his enthusiasm, reinforced yet again why she loved him so deeply. No pressure, no expectation, just support for whatever she decided. "I'll think about it," Mila promised. "Maybe starting with hanging a few here at home and seeing how that feels." Harry smiled, pulling her into his arms. "No rush," he murmured against her hair. "We have all the time in the world." As Mila melted into his embrace, she felt a profound sense of acceptance wash over her. In sharing her art, she had revealed a fundamental piece of herself, and Harry had received it with the same loving care he showed in all aspects of their relationship. Later that afternoon, they hung the painting of Harry in their living room, where the light caught it in the same way it had captured the subject in the bookstore. Standing back to observe it, Harry wrapped his arms around Mila from behind, his chin resting on her shoulder. "Now I'll always know how you see me," he said softly, "even on days when I might forget." Mila leaned back against him, her hands covering his where they rested against her waist. "I'll remind you," she promised, "every day, in 1,000 different ways." Harry turned her in his arms, his expression suddenly serious. "I've been thinking," he began, his hands coming up to frame her face, "about the future. Our future." Mila's heart quickened at the intensity in his voice. "What about it?" "I want everything with you, Mila," he said simply. "A home, a family, growing old, surrounded by books and art and love." His thumbs traced gentle patterns on her cheekbones. "I don't need formal ceremonies or legal documents to know that you're the one I want to spend my life with, but I want you to know that's where my heart is." It wasn't quite a proposal, but rather something more fundamental, a declaration of intention, a mapping of a shared future. Mila felt tears well in her eyes, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming fullness of her heart. "That's where my heart is too," she whispered, rising on tiptoes to press her lips to his. The kiss deepened, a physical expression of the commitment they had just voiced. Harry's arms tightened around her waist, lifting her slightly, as if he couldn't bear even the smallest distance between them. Mila wound her arms around his neck, surrendering to the wave of love and desire that swept through her. Without breaking the kiss, Harry began walking them backward toward the bedroom, their steps a clumsy dance of shared purpose. "I thought the dealer cancelling was disappointing," he murmured against her lips. "Now I see it was the universe giving us this moment instead." "The universe has good timing," Mila replied, echoing his words from the storm-swept cottage as she pulled him down onto their bed. Their lovemaking that afternoon had a new quality to it, a heightened awareness of each other, a celebration of being fully known and accepted. Each caress was both a question and an answer, each shared breath a promise of days yet to come. Afterward, as they lay tangled in sheets and each other, the golden afternoon light painting their skin, Harry traced idle patterns on Mila's bare shoulder. "Would you paint us sometime?" he asked, his voice dreamy with contentment. "Not separately, but together." Mila considered the idea, envisioning how she might capture on canvas the connection they shared. "I'd like that," she decided. "Though it would have to be from memory or photographs, I can hardly be both artist and subject." Harry chuckled, the sound rumbling pleasantly against her ear, where it rested on his chest. "We could set up mirrors," he suggested playfully. "Very complex, very artistic. Or—" his voice took on a more mischievous tone. "We could ask Sophie to sketch us while we pose dramatically." The absurd image made Mila laugh out loud. "Poor Sophie, I think we'd traumatize her." "Probably," Harry agreed with a grin. "Memory it is, then." As their laughter faded into comfortable silence, Mila reflected on how completely her life had transformed since that first morning outside the bookstore. The shy woman fixing her blouse in a car window could never have imagined the journey ahead, finding not just love, but a partnership that allowed her to be fully herself, including the parts she had kept hidden away. In Harry's arms, surrounded by the home they were creating together, Mila felt a certainty that transcended the temporary nature of most things. Whatever the future held, joys and sorrows, triumphs and challenges, they would face it as they had faced the storm at the beach cottage. Together, finding in each other both shelter and the courage to weather whatever came their way. Outside, their windows, spring continued its vibrant progression, mirroring the blossoming of their shared life. And on the wall in their living room, the painting of Harry served as both art and promise, a reflection of love made visible, a testament to being truly seen by the one who matters most. Chapter 9. Autumn Revelations. The crisp autumn air carried the scent of fallen leaves and wood smoke as Mila and Harry strolled hand in hand through the park. The trees around them blazed with color, golden yellows, fiery oranges and deep crimsons, creating a canopy that seemed to catch fire when the late afternoon sun broke through the clouds. "I never truly appreciated autumn until I met you," Harry said, squeezing her hand gently as they walked. "You've taught me to see the beauty in transitions." Mila smiled up at him, her heart full. The past several months of living together had deepened their connection in ways she hadn't thought possible. Each day revealed new facets of Harry to love, the way he hummed while making coffee in the morning, how he always dog-eared the corners of books despite selling them for a living, the gentle snore that sometimes woke her in the middle of the night, but that she found endearing rather than annoying. "I've been thinking," Harry continued, his voice taking on a thoughtful quality that immediately captured her full attention, "about your paintings. Since revealing her art to him 3 months ago, Mila had slowly grown more comfortable sharing this part of herself. Several of her pieces now hung in their apartment, and she had even set up a small studio space in the corner of their home library where natural light streamed through the tall windows. "What about them?" she asked, curious about the direction of his thoughts. "The Fall Arts Festival is coming up next month at the bookstore," he said, gesturing to a poster advertising the event as they passed a community bulletin board. "I think you should consider exhibiting some of your work." Mila felt a flutter of both excitement and apprehension in her chest. She had been painting more frequently in recent months, finding a renewed passion for the art form that had once been her primary emotional outlet. But sharing her work with Harry was one thing. Displaying it for public viewing and critique was entirely another. "I don't know, Harry," she said hesitantly. "My paintings are personal. I'm not sure I'm ready for strangers to see them." Harry stopped walking and turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. The autumn sunlight caught in his eyes, warming them to amber. "I understand," he said softly, "and I would never push you to do something you're not comfortable with. But Mila, your work is extraordinary. The way you capture light and emotion, it's a gift that deserves to be shared." He paused, his thumb tracing gentle circles on the back of her hand. "Think of how many times a book has touched your life, how words written by someone you've never met have made you feel understood. Your art could do that for someone else." His words resonated within her, touching on the very reason she had fallen. In love with literature, its power to connect human experiences across time and space. The idea that her paintings might offer someone else that same connection was both terrifying and compelling. "I'll think about it," she promised, reaching up to brush a fallen leaf from his shoulder. "That's all I can say for now." Harry smiled, clearly understanding that this was neither acceptance nor refusal, but genuine consideration. "That's all I ask," he said, leaning down to kiss her softly. They continued their walk, the conversation shifting to more immediate matters. Dinner, her plans, an upcoming author event at the bookstore, a play they wanted to see. But Mila's mind kept returning to Harry's suggestion, turning it over like a smooth stone in her palm. Later that evening, as Harry prepared dinner, Mila found herself drawn to her small studio space. She stood before her most recent work, a painting of their bedroom at dawn, with morning light spilling across rumpled sheets and the indentation where Harry's head had rested. It was intimate, without being explicit, capturing a moment of peaceful solitude in their shared life. The thought of strangers viewing this moment made her stomach tighten with anxiety. But there was something appealing about the idea as well, a validation of the life she and Harry were building together, a declaration of her love made public through her art. Lost in thought, she didn't hear Harry approach until his arms slipped around her waist from behind, his chin coming to rest on her shoulder. "That's my favorite," he murmured, his breath warm against her neck. "It feels like a glimpse into our own private world." "That's what scares me about showing my work," Mila admitted, leaning back against his solid warmth. "It's like inviting strangers into our bedroom." Harry was quiet for a moment, considering her words. "I understand that," he said finally, "but I also think there's something powerful about sharing our truth with the world. Not everything, of course, but glimpses of the beauty we've found together." He turned her in his arms to face him, his expression suddenly serious. "Speaking of sharing our truth," he continued, his voice taking on a new depth that made her heart skip, "there's something I've been wanting to ask you." Mila felt a shift in the atmosphere between them, a sense of momentous possibility hovering in the air. "What is it?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Harry took a deep breath, his eyes never leaving hers. "I've been carrying this around for weeks, waiting for the perfect moment," he said, reaching into his pocket. "But I'm beginning to think there's no such thing as a perfect moment, just perfect because we're in it together." Mila's breath caught in her throat as Harry withdrew a small velvet box from his pocket. Time seemed to slow as he sank to one knee before her, the last rays of sunset streaming through the window to bathe them both in golden light. "Mila Moon," he said, his voice steady despite the emotion shining in his eyes. "You walked into my life, or rather, used my car window as a mirror, and everything changed. You've brought color and light and laughter into my world in ways I never imagined possible." He paused, taking a breath as if to steady himself. "I want to spend my life with you, building our home, sharing our stories, creating a future together. Will you marry me?" He opened the box to reveal a ring unlike any Mila had seen before, not a traditional diamond solitaire, but a delicate band of rose gold holding a small, perfect moonstone surrounded by tiny sapphires that caught the light. Like captured stars, tears blurred her vision as emotion welled up inside her, too vast to be contained. In that moment, all her hesitations about sharing her art seemed inconsequential compared to the certainty she felt about sharing her life with this man. "Yes," she whispered, her voice catching on the simple syllable. "Yes, Harry. Of course I will." His smile was radiant as he slipped the ring onto her finger, where it nestled as if it had always belonged. When he rose to his feet, she threw her arms around his neck, and he lifted her off the ground in an embrace that spoke of joy, too great for words alone. When he finally set her down, she looked at the ring sparkling on her finger, turning her, and to watch the play of light across the moonstone's surface. "It's beautiful," she said softly. "Perfect." "I wanted something unique," Harry explained, his voice warm with tenderness. "A diamond seemed too conventional for us. The moonstone reminded me of your name, of course, but also of how you reflect light back into the world through your art. And your heart." He brushed a strand of hair from her face. "The sapphires are for your eyes, the first thing I noticed about you that morning." The thoughtfulness behind his choice moved her deeply. In that moment, she made a decision that felt right, with a certainty that surprised her. "Yes," she said suddenly, Harry's brow furrowed slightly in confusion. "You already said yes to marrying me," he reminded her with a gentle smile. Mila laughed, feeling light and certain. "No, I mean yes to the art exhibition. I want to do it." She took a deep breath, drawing strength from the conviction in his eyes. "You're right. Art, like love, is meant to be shared, and I'm ready to share mine with the world." The joy that bloomed across Harry's face was worth any anxiety she might feel about the decision. He pulled her close again, burying his face in her hair. "I'm so proud of you," he murmured, "and selfishly thrilled that everyone will finally see what I've known all along, that I'm engaged to the most talented artist in the city. Engaged." The word sent a thrill through her, both foreign and utterly right. Later that evening, after calls to her grandmother and Harry's family to share their news, they sat together on their small balcony, wrapped in a shared blanket against the autumn chill. The city lights spread before them like earthbound stars, and Mila found herself mentally composing a painting of this moment, the interplay of light and shadow, the warmth of their bodies pressed together, the cool weight of the ring on her. "A finger. What are you thinking?" Harry asked, pressing a kiss to her temple. "I'm thinking about transitions," she replied, echoing his words from earlier. "How sometimes the most beautiful changes happen so gradually you barely notice them, and sometimes they happen in an instant, like the moment between being single and being engaged." Harry's arms tightened around her. "Both kinds are beautiful, in their own way," he said thoughtfully. "Like the difference between a sunrise and a lightning strike." Mila smiled, turning to capture his lips with hers. The kiss deepened, slow and sweet at first, then building with an intensity that mirrored the joy coursing through her veins. When they finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, Harry's eyes held a question and a promise. Without a word, Mila stood and took his hand, leading him back inside to their bedroom. In the soft glow of the bedside lamp, they celebrated their engagement with the wordless language of touch and taste, of sighs and whispers, of two bodies moving together in the ancient dance of love. Later, as they lay entwined in the aftermath of their passion, Mila traced lazy patterns on Harry's chest, watching the way her ring caught the light with each movement. "I was thinking," she murmured, her voice languid with contentment, "about the exhibition." Harry's response was drowsy, his fingers playing absently with her hair. "I want to do a new series," she said, lifting her head to look at him. "Based on our story, from that first morning at the bookstore to now. Key moments that have shaped us." Harry's eyes opened fully at that, interest replacing drowsiness. "I love that idea," he said softly. "Our story told through your eyes." Mila nodded, already envisioning the paintings, the bookstore window where they first met, the rainy evening when he drove her home, the power outage during the storm, their dance in the moonlight, the beach cottage, and now this latest chapter, a ring catching the light, two hands intertwined in promise. "It feels right," she said simply. "Scary, but right." Harry's hand found hers, their fingers intertwining just as she had imagined painting them. "That's how all the best adventures begin," he said softly, "with equal measures of fear and certainty." As they drifted toward sleep in each other's arms, Mila felt a profound sense of gratitude for the unexpected turn her life had taken that morning, months ago when she had paused to fix her blouse in a car window. What had seemed like chance, an embarrassing moment, a first meeting, now revealed itself as something else entirely. The first brushstroke in a masterpiece they were creating together, one day at a time. Outside, autumn leaves drifted down. In the darkness, their falling as silent as snow, nature's own quiet celebration of endings that were really just beautiful beginnings in disguise. The exhibition at Harmony Books bustled with anticipation by 6:30, though officially scheduled for 7. Harry had transformed the space with elegant simplicity. Track lighting illuminated Mila's 15 paintings that chronicled their love story, while antique reading lamps created intimate gathering spaces. In the private bathroom, Mila studied her reflection in a midnight blue silk gown that complemented her amber eyes and moonstone engagement ring. Harry knocked and entered, looking distinguished in his charcoal suit. "I know it's bad luck for the groom to see the bride before the wedding," he smiled, "but I don't think there are any superstitions about seeing your fiancée before her debut as an artist." "How is it out there?" Mila asked nervously. "Crowded, excited. The mayor arrived early, 2 gallery owners from downtown, even that critic from the Tribune." He took her hands reassuringly. "But none of that matters. Tonight is about you sharing your vision with the world." "About us," Mila corrected. "Every painting tells our story." Harry presented her with a bracelet of silver links with moonstones and sapphires, inscribed, "Our reflection is just the beginning." The exhibition space showcased Mila's artistic evolution. The centerpiece painting showed 2 figures before a window, their reflection revealing intertwined auras of color connecting them. "This one will never be for sale," Harry murmured, "no matter what offers come in." As the exhibition progressed, 7 paintings sold. The Tribune critic discussed her technique, and a gallery owner pressed her card into Mila's hand. By 11, as guests departed, Mila stood before the painting of their first meeting, where she had used Harry's car window as a mirror. "So much from such a small moment," Harry said as he joined her. "Sometimes the smallest moments contain the seeds of everything that follows." At home, their celebration continued with passionate lovemaking that began with deliberate appreciation and built to urgent need. Afterward, lying in moonlight, Harry shared his vision of their future: a spring wedding, honeymoon in the mountains, a house with a studio for her and library for him, perhaps children someday. As dawn approached, Harry gave her one final gift, a handmade leather journal titled Reflections of Love, Our Story. "I thought you might want to write our story as well as paint it," he explained. As the first light touched their window, Mila knew their story was just beginning. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would transform even difficult chapters into something beautiful, a masterpiece crafted with choices made in love day after day, year after year.